The morning sun filtered through the dense canopy of Blackwood National Forest, casting dappled gold across the forest floor. The air carried the sharp tang of pine and the faint sweetness of wild honeysuckle, stirred by a breeze that whispered through the towering spruces. It was June 15th, 2018, and for 27-year-old Lila Harper, this was paradise. Her hiking boots crunched rhythmically against the gravelly trail, her breath steady as she navigated the winding path of the Overlook Trail, a 6-mile loop known for its breathtaking views of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Lila was no stranger to these woods. A freelance photographer with a passion for capturing nature's fleeting moments, a deer pausing in a clearing, the way fog clung to the valleys at dawn. She'd spent countless weekends here, her camera slung across her chest, her heart tethered to the wild. Lila was a familiar figure in Blackwood, her auburn hair often tied back in a loose braid, her hazel eyes bright with curiosity. She'd grown up 20 miles away in the small town of Elwood, where her parents still ran Harper's General Store, a community hub for locals and tourists alike. Her love for the outdoors was woven into her childhood, fishing trips with her dad, camping under the stars with her older brother Ethan. After college, she'd returned to Elwood, trading a desk job in Richmond for a life closer to the mountains she loved. Her Instagram was a gallery of Blackwood's beauty, sunsets over craggy peaks, macro shots of dew-kissed ferns, each post captioned with her infectious enthusiasm, chasing light in the wild. #Blackwood Adventures. That morning, Lila had left her apartment at 5:30 a.m., texting Ethan a quick, "Heading to Overlook. Catch you for dinner?" He'd replied with a thumbs-up emoji, their usual exchange. She parked her blue Subaru at the trailhead, a gravel lot tucked off Route 17, where a wooden sign marked the entrance to the trail. Her backpack held the essentials: water, granola bars, a first aid kit, and her Nikon D850, its lens cap worn from use. She told her best friend, Mia, she was chasing a shot of the sunrise from Raven's Point, a rocky outcrop at the trail's highest point. "It's gonna be epic," she'd said, her voice bubbling with excitement over their last coffee date. By 7 a.m., the trail was quiet, save for the trill of a warbler and the distant rustle of leaves. Lila moved with purpose, her steps light but deliberate, her camera occasionally raised to frame a burst of light through the trees. She was alone, or so she thought. The Overlook Trail was popular but not crowded this early, especially on a Friday. Most hikers would arrive later, families and weekenders clogging the lot by noon. For now, the forest was hers. She never returned. By 6 p.m., Ethan Harper was pacing the linoleum floor of his parents' kitchen, his phone clutched tightly. Lila was meticulous about checking in after hikes. Her "I'm not bare food" text was practically ritual. But her last message, the one about the Overlook Trail, had been at 5:32 a.m. No follow-up, no sunset selfie, no call. He tried her phone a dozen times, each unanswered ring tightening the knot in his chest. "She's probably just lost in a shot," he told himself, but the words felt hollow. Lila was careful. She knew Blackwood's trails like the back of her hand, and her Subaru's GPS tracker always brought her back to the lot. Ethan drove to the trailhead, his pickup kicking up dust along Route 17. The lot was nearly empty, except for Lila's Subaru, parked neatly near the sign. The sight of it, doors locked, windows up, her spare water bottle still in the center console, sent a chill through him. Her backpack was gone, her phone nowhere in sight. He called out her name, his voice echoing off the trees, answered only by the wind. The forest, so vibrant in Lila's photos, now felt vast and unyielding, its shadows lengthening as dusk crept in. He dialed 911. "My sister's missing," he said, his voice cracking. "She was hiking the Overlook Trail. Her car's here, but she's not." Within an hour, Blackwood's ranger station was a hive of activity. Ranger Sarah Coleman, a 15-year veteran with a no-nonsense demeanor and a deep knowledge of the park's 200,000 acres, took charge. She knew Lila by sight, most rangers did. The young woman's photos had even graced the park's annual calendar. "We'll find her," Sarah told Ethan, her tone steady but her eyes scanning the map with urgency. The Overlook Trail was rugged but well-marked, with no recent reports of bear activity or rock slides. Still, the park was a labyrinth of ravines, caves, and dense underbrush. People had vanished here before. The initial search began at dusk, flashlights cutting through the twilight. Volunteers from Elwood joined rangers, their boots trampling the trail Lila had walked hours earlier. Ethan insisted on joining, his jaw set, ignoring Sarah's suggestion to stay back. "She's my sister," he said, his voice raw. Mia arrived, her face pale, clutching a photo of Lila laughing at a campfire. "She'd never just disappear," Mia whispered, handing the photo to Sarah. "Something's wrong." By midnight, the search had yielded nothing. Lila scent trail, picked up by a K9 unit, ended abruptly a mile from Raven's Point, as if she'd vanished into the air. Her phone was off or dead, pinging no towers. A ranger found a single item near the trail, a blue hair tie, the kind Lila often wore. It lay coiled in the dirt, unremarkable, yet chilling. Ethan stared at it, his hands shaking. "That's hers," he said, though he couldn't be sure. It was too small, too ordinary, to mean anything, yet it felt like a scream in the silence. The next morning, the search expanded. Helicopters buzzed overhead, their blades slicing through the quiet. Drones scanned the canopy, their footage revealing nothing but endless green. Volunteers combed the trail, calling Lila's name until their voices grew hoarse. Sarah coordinated with the county sheriff's office, pulling in Detective Mark Vargas, a wiry man with a reputation for dogged persistence. He interviewed Ethan and Mia, piecing together Lila's routine, her early hikes, her love for solitary treks, her habit of posting photos mid-hike. "Anyone else know she'd be out here?" Vargas asked. Ethan shook his head. "Just me and Mia. Maybe someone saw her posts online." The community rallied, flyers with Lila's face, smiling, windblown, a mountain behind her, plastered on every lamppost in Elwood. Social media buzzed with hashtag Find Lila, her photos shared thousands of times. A local news crew set up at the trailhead, their camera capturing the grim faces of searchers. Ethan barely slept, his eyes bloodshot as he pored over maps with Sarah, pointing out Lila's favorite spots. "She'd go off trail sometimes," he admitted, "but never far." She knew better. Days passed, each one heavier than the last. The searchers found no footprints, no torn clothing, no signs of a struggle. The forest seemed to swallow every clue. Mia clung to hope, organizing vigils at the town square, candles flickering as neighbors prayed. Ethan, though, felt the weight of the unknown pressing harder each day. "She's out there," he told Vargas, his voice breaking. "She has to be." But the forest kept its secrets. The overlooked trail, with its sweeping views and hidden hollows, stretched endlessly before them, beautiful and merciless. As the first week ended, a storm rolled in, rain lashing the mountains, washing away any trace of Lila Harper. The search continued, but the question hung unspoken: what had taken her? The rain had stopped by the 8th day, leaving Blackwood National Forest cloaked in a heavy mist that clung to the spruces and dulled the morning light. The overlooked trail, now a churned mess of mud and boot prints, buzzed with the frenetic energy of a search in full swing. Ranger Sarah Coleman stood at the trailhead, her radio crackling with updates from teams spread across the park's rugged terrain. Over 200 volunteers had descended on the area, their orange vests bright against the muted greens and grays of the forest. Lila Harper's disappearance had ignited Elwood, transforming neighbors into searchers, strangers into allies, all driven by the same desperate hope: to find her alive. Sarah adjusted her cap, her eyes scanning the topographic map spread across a folding table. Blackwood's 200,000 acres were a maze of ridges, ravines, and hidden caves, with the overlooked trail cutting a deceptively simple path through its heart. The trail itself was manageable, 6 miles of packed dirt and switchbacks, but the surrounding wilderness was unforgiving. Thickets of briars snagged at clothing, and sudden drops hid beneath carpets of leaves. She knew this place, Sarah muttered to herself, tracing the trail's loop with a finger. So where the hell did she go? The search effort was massive, one of the largest in Blackwood's history. Sheriff's deputies coordinated with state police, while Sarah's rangers led teams equipped with topographic maps, GPS units, and thermal drones. Two K9 units, led by a handler named Tom Reese, worked the trail, their German shepherd sniffing for any trace of Lila's scent. Helicopters swept low over the canopy, their pilots squinting for a glimpse of blue fabric, Lila's jacket, her backpack, anything. Volunteers, many of whom knew Lila from her parents' store, fanned out in grids, calling her name until their throats ached. Ethan Harper was among them, his face gaunt, his boots caked with mud. He refused to stay at the command post, despite Sarah's gentle insistence. "I can't just sit there," he told her, his voice rough. "She's my sister." Detective Mark Vargas, chain-smoking despite the damp air, interviewed hikers who'd been in the park that Friday. Most saw nothing unusual, their memories blurred by the monotony of a morning hike. But one, a retiree named Carl Bennett, mentioned a dark pickup truck parked near the trailhead around 6 a.m., didn't think much of it. Carl said, scratching his beard, "Figured it was another hiker, but it was gone when I looped back at noon." Vargas jotted it down, his gut telling him it was something, though he couldn't say what. The lot's gravel surface offered no tire tracks, and no cameras monitored the remote entrance. Still, he radioed the description to Sarah. "Dark pickup, maybe black or navy. Keep an eye out." The first real lead came on day 9, when a volunteer stumbled across a single hiking boot, its laces frayed, half buried in leaves a quarter-mile off the trail near Ravens Point. The boot was women's, size 7, matching Lila's. Ethan's heart leapt when Sarah showed him a photo, but his hope curdled when the K9 unit failed to pick up a scent. "Could have been washed out by the rain," Tom Reese said, his tone apologetic. Forensic techs bagged the boot, but its weathered state suggested it had been there for weeks, maybe months, not days. Vargas wasn't convinced it was Lila's. "Plenty of hikers lose gear out here," he told Sarah, though he ordered a rush on DNA testing just in case. The search pressed on, but the forest fought back. Drones snagged on branches, their batteries draining faster than expected in the humid air. The dogs tired, their noses overwhelmed by the damp earth and blooming wildflowers. Volunteers tripped over roots, their enthusiasm waning as the days blurred together. Mia, Lila's best friend, organized meal drops and water stations, her hands trembling as she handed out coffee to exhausted searchers. "She's out here," she told them, her voice fierce despite the tears in her eyes. "We just haven't looked in the right place." But the right place felt like a needle in a haystack the size of a mountain range. Ethan's parents, Joan and Robert Harper, joined the effort at the command post, their faces etched with a quiet devastation. Joan clutched a photo of Lila, taken last summer at a family barbecue. Her daughter smiled wide as she held a sparkler. She'd call if she could, Joan said to anyone who'd listen. She wouldn't just leave us wondering. Robert, usually stoic, spent hours staring at the forest's edge, as if willing Lila to walk out. The community's support was a lifeline. Neighbors brought casseroles, local businesses donated supplies, but it couldn't fill the void of answers. Vargas dug into Lila's life, searching for anything that might explain her disappearance. Her phone record showed no unusual calls, just a text to Ethan and a few Instagram posts from earlier that week. Her laptop, left open in her apartment, revealed nothing but photo edits and emails about freelance gigs. Her social media was public, her love for Blackwood splashed across every post. Vargas wondered if that visibility had drawn the wrong kind of attention. "Anyone could have known she'd be out here," he told Sarah, his cigarette burning down to the filter. She practically advertised her hikes. By day 14, the search scaled back. The helicopters returned to base, their fuel costs unsustainable. Volunteers dwindled, called back to jobs and families. The K9 units were reassigned, and the drones were grounded after one crashed into a ravine. Sarah stood at the trailhead, her map now marked with red excess, where they'd found nothing. The boot had been a dead end, no DNA, no match to Lila's gear. The pickup truck lead fizzled when no one else corroborated Carl's sighting. "We're not giving up," Sarah told Ethan, but her words rang hollow. The forest was too vast, too secretive. Ethan refused to leave. He hiked the trail daily, his eyes scanning every rock, every shadow, for a sign of Lila, a scrap of her jacket, a glint of her camera lens. Mia joined him when she could, their conversations dwindling to silence as the weight of the unknown pressed down. At night, they sat in the Harper family's living room, poring over Lila's photos, searching for clues they might have missed. One image, posted a week before she vanished, showed her at Raven's Point, the valley sprawling below. A comment caught Ethan's eye. "Stunning. Be safe out there." The user, at Trail Wanderer 23, was a stranger, their profile a generic shot of a mountain. Ethan stared at it, unease prickling his skin. "Probably nothing," Mia said, but her voice wavered. The town of Elwood kept Lila's name alive. Flyers faded on telephone poles, their edges curling in the summer heat. A vigil drew hundreds, candles glowing against the dusk as a local pastor prayed for Lila's return. Ethan spoke, his voice breaking as he thanked the community. "She loved this place," he said, gesturing to the mountains looming in the distance. "She wouldn't want us to stop looking." But as the weeks turned to months, hope felt like a candle burning too low, its flame flickering against the vast, indifferent wilderness. Vargas kept the case open, but leads were scarce. The forest had swallowed Lila Harper, leaving only questions and a single, frayed hair tie that might not even be hers. Sarah, staring at the map one last time before folding it away, felt the weight of Blackwood's secrets. "She's out there," she whispered, but the words were lost in the wind. October 2019 draped Blackwood National Forest in a palette of rust and gold, the overlooked trail now a quiet ribbon beneath a canopy of falling leaves. 16 months had passed since Lila Harper vanished, and the frenetic energy of the initial search had faded like the summer heat. The command post at the trailhead was gone, its tables and maps packed away, replaced by a weathered sign urging hikers to stay on trails. The forest had reclaimed its silence, but for Ethan Harper, the absence of answers was a wound that refused to heal. Elwood had moved on, as small towns do. The flyers with Lila's face, her hazel eyes bright, her smile frozen in time, had yellowed on lampposts, some torn away by wind or replaced by ads for fall festivals. Harper's General Store still drew a steady stream of locals, but Joan and Robert Harper worked in a haze, their conversations clipped, their eyes darting to the door as if Lila might walk in. Ethan, now 30, had taken a leave from his mechanic job, unable to focus on anything but his sister. He'd moved back into his parents' house, the upstairs bedroom a shrine to Lila's life. Her camera lenses lined up on a shelf, her hiking journals stacked beside a photo of them fishing as kids, grinning with sunburned cheeks. The official search had ended after 6 weeks, the sheriff's office citing exhausted resources and a lack of new leads. Detective Mark Vargas, still dogged by the case, kept Lila's file on his desk, its edges worn from restless nights. He'd chased every tip: the dark pickup truck that never materialized, the hiking boot that bore no DNA, the at Trail Wanderer 23 account that led to a dead-end IP address in another state. "It's like she evaporated," he told Ranger Sarah Coleman over coffee at a diner, his voice heavy with frustration. Sarah, who'd seen her share of lost hikers, nodded grimly. "Blackwood's good at keeping secrets," she said, stirring her mug. "Too good." Ethan refused to let the case die. He and Mia, Lila's best friend, had launched a campaign to keep her name alive. They printed new flyers, organized community walks along the Overlook Trail, and built a website, findlilaharper.com, where they posted updates and pleas for information. Mia, a graphic designer, poured her grief into the site, filling it with Lila's photos, her lens capturing the mist over Raven's Point, the glint of a stream at dusk. The site drew thousands of hits, but most were from true crime enthusiasts and armchair detectives, their theories ranging from plausible, a fall into a hidden ravine, to absurd, alien abduction. Ethan read every comment, his hope dwindling with each dead-end tip. Online forums buzzed with speculation. On Reddit's /unsolved mysteries, users dissected Lila's last Instagram post, a shot of her boots against the trail's gravel, captioned, "Chasing Dawn. #Blackwood Adventures." "She was alone, right? Easy target," one user wrote. Another speculated about a serial predator, pointing to a 2015 case where a hiker's backpack was found 20 miles away in Blackwood, the owner never located. Ethan lurked in these threads, his jaw tight, hating how Lila's life had become a puzzle for strangers to solve. Mia urged him to step away. "It's just noise," she said, her voice soft but firm. "They don't know her." But Ethan couldn't stop. Every theory, no matter how wild, was a thread he couldn't let go. In spring 2020, a flicker of hope emerged. A woman camping in Blackwood, 15 miles from the overlooked trail, reported a disturbing encounter. A man in his 40s, wiry and quiet, had watched her campsite from a distance, vanishing when she called out. She described him to rangers: a faded green jacket, a baseball cap pulled low, and Sarah alerted Vargas. The description didn't match any known suspects, but the location rekindled interest in Lila's case. Vargas combed through reports of similar incidents, finding 2 others in Blackwood over the past 5 years. Fleeting sightings of a lone man, always gone before rangers arrived. "Could be nothing," Vargas told Ethan, "but we're checking it out." The lead went nowhere. The camper's description was too vague, and no one else reported seeing the man. Blackwood's vastness made follow-up impossible without more to go on. Ethan, though, clung to it, hiking the area where the sighting occurred, his eyes scanning for anything: a footprint, a discarded item that might tie to Lila. He found nothing but pine needles and silence. By 2021, 3 years after Lila's disappearance, the case was officially cold. Vargas still called Ethan every few months, his tone apologetic. "We're not closing it," he'd say, "just waiting for something to break." Sarah, too, kept Lila's photo pinned to her office wall, a reminder of the one she couldn't find. The Harpers held an annual vigil, the crowd smaller each year, their candles a faint glow against the creeping dusk. Joan spoke at the third one, her voice trembling. "Lila's still out there in some way," she said, clutching Robert's hand. "We won't stop looking." Mia, meanwhile, had taken to social media, her posts a mix of grief and defiance. She shared memories of Lila, her laugh, her habit of naming every squirrel she saw, alongside pleas for tips. One post, a video of Lila singing off-key at a campfire, went viral, racking up 50,000 views. "This is who we're looking for," Mia captioned it. "Please, if you know anything." The comments poured in, most offering prayers, some speculating about foul play. One, from an anonymous account, read, "Check the caves near Ravens Point. People don't just vanish." Ethan fixated on it, spending weeks hiking the area, but the caves, dark, narrow, and endless, yielded nothing. Life pressed on. Ethan took up running the store with his parents, the routine a fragile anchor. Mia moved to Richmond for a new job but called daily, her voice a lifeline. The forest, though, remained a constant presence, its beauty now laced with dread. Ethan avoided the overlooked trail, but felt its pull every time he drove past Route 17. He wondered if Lila was still out there, her camera catching light no one would ever see. In Elwood, the case had become a ghost story, whispered by locals over coffee. Kids dared each other to hike the trail, calling it Lila's Loop. The Harpers hated it, but they couldn't stop it. The forest had taken their daughter, and now it was taking her story, turning it into myth. As 2022 dawned, with no new leads and no answers, Ethan sat in Lila's room, her journals open on his lap. He read her last entry, dated the day before she vanished. "Heading to Ravens Point tomorrow. Sunrise is calling. Can't wait to see what the light does." He closed the book, his chest tight, and whispered, "Where you, Lila?" The forest didn't answer. Blackwood stood silent, its secrets buried deep, waiting for something, or someone, to unearth them. June 2023 painted Blackwood National Forest in vibrant greens, the air thick with the hum of cicadas and the scent of sun-warmed pine. 5 years had passed since Lila Harper vanished on the overlooked trail, and the case had settled into the quiet ache of a wound that wouldn't close. Ethan Harper, now 32, still hiked the trails around Elwood, his eyes scanning for signs he knew he'd likely never find. The town had moved on, but the Harpers hadn't. Lila's absence was a shadow in their home, her photos a constant reminder of what was lost. Then, on a humid afternoon, a chance discovery shattered the silence. Marjorie Tate, a 68-year-old retiree, was walking her border collie, Rusty, along a lesser-known path near Blackwood's northern edge, about 3 miles from Ravens Point. Marjorie, a former librarian who'd moved to Elwood for its quiet beauty, often wandered the forest's fringes, letting Rusty chase squirrels through the underbrush. That day, Rusty darted off the path, his bark sharp and insistent. Marjorie followed, pushing through briars until she found him digging frantically in a small clearing. The ground was soft, disturbed by recent rains, and Rusty's paws had unearthed something unnatural, a tattered blue backpack, its straps frayed, half buried in the damp earth. Marjorie's heart sank. She recognized the backpack style, common among hikers but eerily familiar from the flyers that still lingered in Elwood's coffee shops. She knelt, brushing dirt from the fabric, and found a small keychain clipped to a zipper, a silver mountain charm engraved with LH. Her breath caught. She'd seen Lila's name enough times to know what this could mean. Careful not to disturb the scene, she leashed Rusty and called the sheriff's office, her voice trembling. "I think I found something," she told the dispatcher. "It's a backpack. It might be hers." Within hours, the clearing was a hive of activity. Detective Mark Vargas arrived, his face grim but focused, joined by Ranger Sarah Coleman and a forensic team from the state police. The backpack lay where Marjorie had found it, its blue nylon streaked with mud, a stark contrast to the vibrant ferns around it. Vargas crouched beside it, his gloved hands careful as he unzipped the main compartment. Inside were a water bottle, a granola bar wrapper, and a small notebook, its pages warped but intact. The notebook's cover bore Lila's handwriting. Trail Notes, 2018. Sarah's eyes met Vargas's, both silently acknowledging the weight of the find. "It's hers," Sarah said, her voice low. The forensic team cordoned off the area, their cameras flashing as they documented every detail. The clearing was remote, accessible only by a faint game trail, the kind Lila might have followed for a perfect shot. The backpack's contents were cataloged: a spare lens cap, a folded map, and tucked in a side pocket, a single earring, a small silver hoop, matching one Lila wore in countless photos. Ethan was called to the scene, his pickup screeching into the lot an hour later. When Vargas showed him the backpack, Ethan's knees buckled. "That's her charm," he whispered, pointing to the keychain. "She got it for her 25th birthday." Mia, who'd driven from Richmond, clutched his arm, tears streaming as she stared at the muddy nylon. "She was here," Mia said, her voice breaking. "She was right here." The discovery electrified the stagnant case. Vargas ordered a rush on forensic analysis, sending the backpack and its contents to the state lab in Richmond. The notebook was the most promising lead. Its pages, though water-damaged, contained Lila sketches of Blackwood's vistas and jotted notes about light angles and shutter speeds. One entry, dated June 14, 2018, read, "Saw a guy near the trailhead. Quiet, kept to himself. Weird vibe." Ethan read it aloud, his hand shaking. "She never mentioned anyone," he told Vargas. "Why didn't she tell me?" Vargas scribbled the detail, his mind racing. A witness, a suspect. It was the first hint that Lila might not have been alone. The forensic team scoured the clearing, their metal detectors humming as they searched for more. They found a second item, 10 feet from the backpack, a fragment of blue fabric, torn and weathered, caught in a thorn bush. It matched the jacket Lila had worn in her last Instagram post. The lab confirmed it carried traces of human DNA, too degraded for an immediate match but enough to warrant further testing. Vargas felt a surge of adrenaline. "This isn't random," he told Sarah. "Someone buried that backpack. Someone didn't want it found." News of the discovery spread like wildfire. Elwood's quiet streets buzzed with speculation, the local diner filled with whispers about Lila's case. The findelaharper.com website crashed from traffic, and Mia posted an update, her words raw. "We found her backpack. We're closer than ever. Keep sharing." The media descended, news vans clogging Route 17 as reporters interviewed Marjorie, who recounted Rusty's frantic digging. "He just knew," she said, patting the collie's head. "He wouldn't stop." Vargas and Sarah retraced Lila's likely path, mapping the game trail back to the overlook. The clearing's isolation was chilling, far from the main trail, hidden by dense foliage. If she wandered here, she was chasing something, Sarah said, her boots sinking into the soft earth. Or someone led her. Vargas nodded, his mind on the notebook's cryptic note. He pulled records of park employees and locals, focusing on men who frequented Blackwood in 2018. One name surfaced repeatedly: Daniel Webb, a 42-year-old maintenance worker who'd serviced the park's trails for years. Quiet, unassuming, he lived alone in a cabin near Elwood, his life a blank slate of routine. Vargas had interviewed him in 2018, a cursory chat that led nowhere. Now, the notebook's mention of a quiet guy gnawed at him. The lab's initial report came back a week later. The backpack's DNA was a partial match to Lila's, pulled from a hair sample Ethan had provided years ago. The fabric fragment was less conclusive, but its dye matched her jacket. More startling was a trace of male DNA on the backpack strap. Not enough for a full profile, but enough to run against databases. Vargas felt the case shifting, the forest secrets starting to crack. He ordered surveillance on Webb, whose name appeared in park logs the day Lila vanished. He was there, Vargas told his team. Same trailhead, same morning. The Harpers clung to the news, their hope fragile but fierce. Ethan and Mia joined volunteers to search the clearing's perimeter, their eyes scanning for anything the forensics team might have missed. Joan and Robert sat at home, the backpack's photo on their kitchen table, a tangible piece of Lila after years of nothing. "She's talking to us," Joan said, her fingers tracing the keychain's engraving. "She's telling us to keep going." But the breakthrough was a double-edged sword. The backpack confirmed Lila had been in that clearing, but why? And where was she now? The DNA trace hinted at a perpetrator, but the profile was incomplete, the truth still shrouded. As Vargas watched Webb's cabin from an unmarked car, the forest loomed beyond, its shadows deeper than ever. The case was alive again, but the answers were still out there, buried somewhere in Blackwood's endless green. The late June sun hung low over Blackwood National Forest, its light filtering through the pines as Detective Mark Vargas sat in an unmarked sedan, eyes fixed on Daniel Webb's cabin. It was 2023, 5 years since Lila Harper vanished, and the discovery of her backpack had cracked the case wide open. The trace of male DNA on the strap, though partial, had given Vargas a thread to pull, and he was tugging hard. Webb, a 42-year-old maintenance worker for the park, was now the focal point of a reinvigorated investigation. His name had surfaced in 2018 park logs, placing him at the overlooked trailhead the morning Lila disappeared. The notebook's mention of a quiet guy with a weird vibe gnawed at Vargas, a puzzle piece that refused to be ignored. Webb's life seemed unremarkable on paper. He lived alone in a weathered cabin on the edge of Elwood, a mile from Route 17. He'd worked for Blackwood's maintenance crew for a decade, clearing trails and repairing signs. His presence so routine, he was nearly invisible. Locals described him as polite but distant, a man who kept to himself, his only hobby tinkering with an old pickup in his yard, a dark navy one, Vargas noted, recalling Carl Bennett's 2018 sighting. Webb had no criminal record, no red flags, but something about his quiet routine felt too deliberate, like a mask worn too long. The forensic lab in Richmond worked overtime on the backpack's evidence. The partial male DNA profile, extracted from the strap, was run through CODIS, the national DNA database, but returned no direct matches. However, it showed a familial link to a 2016 assault case in a neighboring county, a cousin of Webb's, long deceased. It wasn't enough for a warrant, but it was enough for Vargas to tighten the net. "He's our guy," Vargas told Ranger Sarah Coleman over the phone, his voice taut. "I can feel it." Sarah, mapping the clearing where the backpack was found, agreed. "He knows these woods better than anyone. If he hid something, we need to find it." Surveillance began discreetly. Vargas's team tracked Webb's movements, noting his predictable routine: early mornings at the park, evenings at his cabin, occasional trips to a hardware store. But there were oddities. He'd been seen lingering near remote trails, his truck parked at obscure access points late at night. One deputy, tailing him, reported Webb stopping at a gas station to buy bleach and heavy-duty trash bags. Innocent enough, but chilling in context. Vargas dug deeper, pulling Webb's park records. In 2018, he clocked out early on June 15th, the day Lila vanished, citing a personal errand. No one had questioned it then. Now it screamed suspicion. The breakthrough came when the lab refined the DNA profile using advanced genetic genealogy techniques. The familial link led to a distant relative who'd submitted DNA to a public ancestry site, narrowing the profile to Webb's immediate family. It wasn't courtroom ready, but it justified a search warrant. Vargas and Sarah planned a raid, coordinating with a tactical team to move on Webb's cabin at dawn on July 10th. Ethan and Mia were briefed, their faces pale but resolute. "If he knows something about Lila," Ethan said, his voice low, "make him talk." The raid unfolded in the gray light of morning. Deputies surrounded the cabin, their boots silent on the dew-soaked grass. Vargas knocked, his voice firm. "Daniel Webb, Sheriff's Office." "Open the door." Silence, then the creak of floorboards. Webb appeared, his lean frame filling the doorway, his eyes calm but unreadable. "What's this about?" he asked, his voice steady. Vargas handed him the warrant, his team sweeping inside. The cabin was sparse, almost monastic, a single bed, a worn couch, a cluttered workbench. But the search uncovered a locked metal box under the floorboards, pried open to reveal a chilling trove. Polaroids of Blackwood's trails, some with timestamps from 2018. One showed a woman from a distance, her auburn hair unmistakable, her blue jacket catching the light. Ethan, brought in to identify items, gasped. "That's Lila," he said, his voice breaking. Other photos showed different women, all hikers, their faces unaware of the lens. A notebook listed dates and locations, including June 15th, 2018, with a cryptic note. "Overlook, blue jacket early." Webb was arrested, his expression blank as cuffs clicked around his wrists. At the station, Vargas and Sarah interrogated him, the air thick with tension. Webb sat still, his hands folded, his silence maddening. "We have your DNA on her backpack," Vargas said, leaning forward. "We have photos." "Talk." Webb's lips twitched, a faint smile. "You're fishing," he said softly. "I'm just a guy who likes the woods." But his calm cracked when Vargas slid the Polaroid of Lila across the table. His eyes flickered, a pulse jumping in his neck. Hours into the interrogation, Webb offered fragments. "I saw her that day," he admitted, his voice flat. "She was taking pictures. Didn't talk to her." When pressed about the backpack, he claimed he'd found it months later. Thought it was trash. His story unraveled under scrutiny. Why keep it? Why bury it? Vargas pushed harder, sensing Webb's detachment was a facade. "Where is she, Daniel?" he demanded. Webb's eyes met his, cold and unyielding. "You're asking the wrong question," he said, then clammed up. The search of Webb's property continued. In a shed behind the cabin, deputies found a hidden compartment with more items. A woman's scarf, a broken watch, a hiking boot. None confirmed as Lila's, but all suspicious. Soil samples from the shed matched the clearing's composition, tying Webb to the burial site. Vargas felt the case tightening, but one question burned. Where was Lila? Webb's cryptic remark haunted him. Was she alive? Dead? Hidden somewhere in Blackwood's vastness? Ethan and Mia waited at the station, their hope tempered by dread. Joan and Robert joined them, clutching each other as Vargas updated them. "He's involved," Vargas said. "We're sure of it, but he's not giving us everything." Ethan's fists clenched. "Make him tell you where she is," he said, his voice raw. Mia touched his arm, her eyes red. "What if he won't?" she whispered. The community buzzed with news of the arrest. Hashtag Find Lila Harper trended again, the backpack's discovery fueling hope and horror. Online forums exploded with theories, some calling Webb a serial predator, others questioning if he acted alone. Vargas ignored the noise, focusing on the evidence. The photos suggested a pattern, a predator stalking Blackwood's trails. But without Lila's remains or a confession, the truth was incomplete. As July faded, the investigation churned on. Webb was charged with evidence tampering, but murder charges needed more. Vargas and Sarah scoured Blackwood, guided by Webb's notebook, searching caves and hollows near the clearing. Each empty search felt like a blow, but Vargas refused to stop. "He knows where she is," he told Sarah, his cigarette burning low. "We just need to break him." The forest loomed, its secrets closer to the surface, but still out of reach. For the Harpers, the arrest was a step toward justice, but the absence of Lila's fate was a torment all its own. The truth was there, locked in Webb's silence, waiting to be pried free. August 2023 brought a restless heat to Blackwood National Forest, the air thick with the scent of dry pine and the hum of insects. The discovery of Lila Harper's backpack and Daniel Webb's arrest had rekindled hope in Elwood, but for Ethan Harper and his family, the absence of Lila's fate was a torment that gnawed deeper with each passing day. Detective Mark Vargas and Ranger Sarah Coleman pressed forward, determined to wrench the truth from Webb's chilling silence. The forest, vast and unyielding, held the final pieces of a puzzle that had haunted them for 5 years. Webb's interrogation stretched into weeks, his demeanor a maddening blend of detachment and defiance. In a dimly lit room at the sheriff's station, Vargas leaned across the table, his voice steady but sharp. "We have your photos, Daniel. Your notebook. Your DNA on her backpack. Tell us where she is." Webb's eyes, cold as the caves he knew so well, flicked to the Polaroid of Lila, her auburn hair catching the dawn light. He exhaled, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "You think you've got me," he said softly, "but you don't know the half of it." Under pressure, Webb's facade began to crack. On August 12th, after days of relentless questioning, he offered a confession, delivered in a monotone that chilled the room. "It wasn't planned," he said, staring at the table. "I saw her that morning, taking pictures near Raven's Point. She was alone, always alone. I followed her. She didn't hear me." His words were clinical, as if recounting a routine task. He described luring Lila off the trail with a question about a nearby vista, his knowledge of Blackwood's paths disarming her. When she turned to leave, he panicked. "I didn't want her to tell anyone I was there," he said. "It just happened." Webb admitted to strangling Lila in a remote clearing, his hands shaking as he described hiding her body in a shallow cave, one of dozens tucked into Blackwood's cliffs. "No one would find her," he said, his voice flat. "The forest keeps what you give it." He'd buried her backpack later, thinking it would erase his tracks. The other items in his shed, the scarf, the watch, belonged to 2 other hikers, women who'd vanished in 2016 and 2019. Webb's confession revealed a pattern, a predator who used Blackwood's isolation as a hunting ground, his maintenance job a perfect cover. Guided by Webb's directions, Vargas and Sarah led a team to a cave 2 miles from the backpack's clearing, its entrance hidden by a tangle of vines. The air inside was damp, the walls slick with moss. Flashlights swept over the stone, landing on a small pile of bones, carefully arranged, as if Webb had returned to the site over the years. A forensic team confirmed the remains were Lila's, identified by dental records and a silver hoop earring still tangled in her hair. Nearby, they found fragments of her camera, its lens cracked but intact. Ethan, called to the station for the news, collapsed into Mia's arms, his sobs echoing in the sterile room. "She's gone," he whispered. "She's really gone." The Harpers gathered at home, Joan clutching the earring, Robert staring out at the mountains that had taken their daughter. Mia, her face streaked with tears, vowed to keep Lila's memory alive through her photos, planning a gallery exhibit in Elwood. The confirmation of Lila's death was a crushing blow, but it brought a bitter clarity. "We know now," Joan said, her voice trembling but resolute. "We can say goodbye." Webb's trial was swift. Charged with 3 counts of murder, he pleaded guilty, his confession sparing the Harpers a prolonged courtroom ordeal. The Polaroids, the notebook, and the DNA evidence formed an airtight case. Sentenced to life without parole, Webb sat expressionless as the gavel fell, his final words to Vargas a chilling whisper. "The forest still has secrets." The revelation of his other victims sent shockwaves through the region, prompting a task force to comb Blackwood for more remains. 2 additional bodies were found by year's end, closure for other families who'd waited in the same agonizing limbo. Elwood changed in the aftermath. The overlooked trail, once a draw for hikers, became a place of caution. The park installed security cameras at trailheads and increased ranger patrols, measures driven by community outcry. A memorial for Lila was erected near Ravens Point, a simple stone engraved with her name and a line from her journal, "Chasing Light in the Wild." At the dedication, hundreds gathered, their candles glowing against the dusk. Ethan spoke, his voice steady for the first time in years. "Lila loved this place," he said. "She'd want us to keep it beautiful, but safe." Marjorie Tate and her dog Rusty became local heroes, their chance discovery the key that unlocked the case. Marjorie, humble but proud, accepted a community award, patting Rusty's head as she spoke. "He just knew," she said, echoing her words from that fateful day. The role of chance wasn't lost on Vargas, who kept Lila's file on his desk, a reminder of how fragile justice could be. "If that dog hadn't dug," he told Sarah over coffee, "we might still be looking." The Harpers found a fragile piece. Ethan returned to the store, his laughter rarer, but returning in moments, when a customer mentioned Lila's photos, or when he flipped through her journals, her words alive on the page. Mia's exhibit, Lila's Light, opened in 2024, filling a local gallery with her images of Blackwood's beauty. Visitors wept at the photos, their vibrant colors a testament to Lila's spirit. Joan and Robert attended, holding hands as they stood before a shot of Ravens Point at dawn, the light breaking over the valley. "She's still here," Joan whispered, her eyes on the horizon. Blackwood remained, its beauty unchanged, but its shadows deeper. The forest had hidden Lila's fate for 5 years, yielding it only by chance. For the Harpers, closure came with a cost, grief tempered by justice, love enduring through loss. As Ethan stood at the memorial one evening, the wind carrying the scent of pine, he felt Lila's presence in the quiet. "We found you," he said, his voice soft. "Rest now."